Good afternoon. This is the second interview that we will be holding with a wonderful woman for our podcast, The Power Is You. And her name is Nuthan Manohar, and I'm going to give the floor to her. Good afternoon, Nuthan. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be on this podcast. And I would like to start our interview by asking you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you, Saskia. So, hi, I'm Nuthan Manohar. I'm the founder of Me Met Me. Since 2010, I have been working in well being as a researcher, as a lecturer, as a coach. And prior to that, I used to work in brand consulting, looking into behavior, into product design, into strategy um, for, for across 11 countries in Asia Pacific. The transition into well-being came because of my own journey through depression, through anxiety, through insomnia. So since 2010, I've worked with over 30,000 people, organizations, colleges, people, and it's been about helping others become resilient to stress, find happiness and motivation, and ultimately to sleep deeply. These were problems that I faced, and therefore I kind of started working on how to look at these problems. And if I were to look at it overall, what is it that I do? I think if you become resilient to stress, find your motivation, and sleep deeply, you're ultimately happy. And that's what I think is my journey about helping others to find happiness.
Oh, okay, that's wonderful. For this occasion, we want to talk about empowerment. Nursia Afridi, a well-known human rights activist, didn't join us today. And myself, we have written a book, The Power Is You, an odyssey towards self-empowerment, which is based on her life story, which is truly an odyssey of empowerment in which she faced many challenges and also obstacles, but always was able to, as you mentioned yourself, to find the resilience and the power in herself to stand up and continue. And these interviews are meant to also talk to as many women as possible to discover what is your power. So I want to start with the first question, and that revolves around, because this is where often it starts, a thorough knowledge and deep understanding of ourselves. So what was the most hidden personal fear that has hindered you throughout your life?
So I always prided myself for someone not being frightened, not having fear, especially since I had overcome fear of dark. I used to be scared of dark at some point. I also had fear of seeing corals if you go snorkeling, because I had drowned as a kid a couple of times. So since I had overcome these, I honestly thought I'm somebody who didn't have fear. But it was towards the end of the last year, 2023, that I realized that I think all of my life was actually driven by this hidden fear. And last year, I mean, maybe because, I was trying to understand few patterns about myself, which was quite baffling. I had to face it head on, and it was not pleasant. But yeah, the ultimate fear that I had was not to belong. Um, because, yes, I mean, it goes a lot deeper from there. In the sense, I was abused as a child, I was sexually abused. And I come from a very dysfunctional family. And in the process, I mean, when this happened, I think the first time it happened, it was in one of my uncle's home. And I remember telling this to my mom, and I was beaten for saying that. And thus a fear kind of, came into me. Uh, and it's a mix when it comes to, I mean, sexual abuse as a child. It's a mix of many things. Okay, because later on in life, I started working with people who have been abused. Um, it's just that you start questioning everything about yourself, because suddenly You don't know. I mean, as a child, you don't know something was wrong that was done to you, but you feel it that there's something wrong that's going on. And you tell it to the person whom you think you should, but in the process, you get, abused further in a different way. And therefore, I kept quiet, and I kept quiet for the longest time. Maybe it was in my ninth standard, that is when I'm maybe 15, that somebody, I mean, it was my brother's friend who asked me about, I mean, hey, did something like this happen to you? By then, I already know. And he was the first person to ask me. And then I realized even he has been to something like that. And, anyways, you kind of try to keep it hidden, and in the process, maybe when I went into my teenage, I became rebellious. I did not want to be a woman. I would have extremely short hair, very, very masculine. To this day, I think I am like that. I tend to be more masculine in a form to protect myself, because as a woman, you are more vulnerable. The other is that, I mean, even despite being very rebellious, the deepest thing was, to keep it hidden,
Mm,
because you are frightened that the next time you say it, things are going to go worse, and
okay.
you keep quiet about it. But then and my way of dealing with the problem was, maybe very early on, I had a good mentor. He did not know about this background, but then he put me onto social projects, and therefore I started working on abuse victims. I started really understanding more about it. I started looking at sex work in India as a research for the government. So various things that started throwing up a lot of light, and so I've been very, very passionate about this whole area, where there is exploitation, where there is vulnerability. And way back when I had started studying about it or looking into it, one in four children were sexually abused in India. And now the number is one in two. 50% of children that in India are sexually abused, and there is so much of silence about it. And I've gone ahead and worked with other abuse victims, but I never spoke about my own history of it.
Mm,
Maybe a few years ago, my eldest brother asked me, finally, like, I mean, at some point, people start understanding that, okay, there's something wrong with her, and could it be that she was abused? And I remember talking about it, but then it's not a very supportive kind of scenario back home. So I was asked to forgive, which doesn't make any sense to me, because I mean, forgiveness, I mean, it's about injustice. It's not about forgiveness and further silence, because that's what we would like a victim to do. And
yeah.
I did not want to take a victim stance anyway. I'd left it behind. But here was the baffling problem. I would for the for I mean, I never wanted to be in my hometown, which is Kerala. I never loved it, but for some reason I would keep coming back to that place. And this was the question that kept baffling me. Why do I keep coming back? I step out and then I come back. I step out, I come back. For the strangest reasons, I will be pulled right back in. So I needed to break out of this pattern. And that's how I started really pushing this question: why am I here?
Mm.
You wouldn't believe what happened after that. So I started studying something called systemic constellation, where we look at underlying
Wait,
patterns.
wait, 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 because we will speak about, I want to ask another question related
Sure.
to this part of fear, because I really want to give you the stage, but I really want to also
Sure.
understand, because it's obvious that an experience like that is so undermining for who you are. And you mentioned that your biggest fear is this feeling of not belonging. But can you explain more in detail, how did you manage to face that fear, which I don't know when you started to feel that fear, and what were the actual steps that you took to put that fear aside and achieve what you wanted in your life?
Mm, mm.
For a moment that you decided, and what are the steps that you took? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay. So for me, the steps came in a very painful way, in the sense that so there were multiple people who had abused me. They were all from my mother's side of the family, and I realized that it's a systemic problem there. To the extent that I do understand that my mother was also abused, even though she's never spoken about it, all her behavior points towards that. And what happened was that the daughter of the uncle, lands up home, and I was trying to avoid it. So my way of dealing with it is, avoiding my mother's side of the family. Okay. And if children are born into that family, and especially if it's a girl, I really worry. Okay. But then I just try not to deal with it at all. That's my way of doing it. And even though I'm empowered in so many other ways, when it comes to family, we try to protect our family, we are loyal to our family, we love our family, etc., and we keep quiet. And as though this problem, I mean, this it wasn't enough that this girl had come in and it was already set triggering me, but I was nice to her. The man, that is a cousin of mine, again another uncle's son, I mean, he walks in after 33 years for the first time in front of me, and I don't even recognize him, and he has raped me when I was a child. And he's saying, "Hey, how are you?" And I'm looking at his face, not sure what happened. And then I turn to my mother and I look at her face, and that's when I realize she knows who it is and she understands the situation. I keep looking at her because it is her house, hoping that she would do something. And I realize, no, again, I will have to be silent. And that day I decided I have to stop. And I walked out and I walked forward. And it was the most painful thing I have done. And I realized all my life I kept pulling myself back by trying to belong to a family which did not really honor me. And once this set off, I mean, once I moved out, again, the problems, I mean, even the backlash was severe.
Yeah.
I mean, the words I was called were not sweet, okay, for leaving my mother now. But I think I moved on from there. And to the point that I actually spoke about it in to others for the very first time. I've been silent for decades, and many couldn't believe me because I've worked with populists, I've worked with so many people, and they couldn't believe that this has happened to me. And then they start speaking about their own experiences, and they say that yes, we understand why you were silent.
Yeah.
Right? And it's systemic, and they're like, no, now you have to move ahead.
Yes, but what I also hear in what you are telling is that you said they didn't honor you, but you, with walking away, you started to realize that you have to honor yourself.
Yes.
And I would like also then to know what were some of, since that moment, because that was a defining moment, you must have also faced other challenges and obstacles along the way. Can you tell us a little bit about what other challenges you had to overcome to reach the point where you are now?
So there is a lot of peace right now because where I am right now, I think it's beautiful because I still love my mother. I understand her. When I say I understand her, I mean it's like I understand her like I've never done before. But I also understand boundaries and what shouldn't be crossed. And the whole idea that sometimes your family, your country, your culture could be the most toxic thing for you, for your soul. So and the challenges that come is because, see, there is so much of comfort in staying there silent, in suffering.
Exactly.
Okay, so the challenge was to really have that belief that my life is worth moving forward, coming out of this comfort zone. Okay, and be having that courage to move forward. It was not easy, but again, I think I'm blessed that way, that there were so many people who love me and cherish me, who really make me believe in myself. And also I think I also have that belief in myself. And therefore, after now that I'm 43, I was finally able to move. Something that happened to me when I was 10 years old, and it was systemic, so it was maybe 8 to 12, 8 to 13 years old. That was the time when all this happened. I've been finally able to move out. Otherwise, I had moved forward. I could empower myself, but deep within, I was still silent. I'm no longer silent. I don't have to be silent about it.
No.
And I'm fine with it.
Yes. Okay. So you say that you had to very purposefully somehow decide to move out of that comfort zone. And the comfort zone was that you had been taught also to stay silent. and this is what you did for a very long time. And the moment that you took that decision to break, so to speak, also with the consequences of that silence, because that had to do also with loyalty towards your family, and maybe it's also cultural, and it has to do with traditions. But you must have known in that process, because it's a process, I can imagine, moments of defeat. Can you
Yes.
describe a moment of defeat in that journey that you have embarked on since the moment that you decided to not stay silent anymore?
Wow, that was, I think I felt, I think for months, I mean, it thankfully happened very quickly. Everything just progressed very quickly. But for almost every day, I felt defeated, especially because I was hoping against hope that my family would support.
Okay. Mm.
And I don't see that happening. So much so that, I mean, so as a child, I hero worshipped my eldest brother. But now I've decided that is one relationship that needs to go.
Okay. That's
So it felt, I mean, I felt completely defeated. I mean, I couldn't believe what he said to me and things. I mean, it really broke me. It broke me. I mean, what the abuser couldn't do, my eldest brother could do with his words.
mm,
It broke me to the point that, I mean, I had to turn somewhere, otherwise I would have been silent. So in many ways I'm grateful for him, because he broke me to the point where I had to come out of my silence. Otherwise I was actually contemplating suicide for what he had said. All right. And in since I turned to others, they empowered me,
and
and they empowered me to move forward with it.
how did they do that?
Yes, they did it by giving me all sorts of options. They were like, okay, Nuthan, we're going to do something for you. What would you like us to do? So we reached out to the police, we reached out to lawyers. It was very re-traumatizing, because you have to relive everything and get all the details, the dates, all that. And but then at the same time, you also realize, because the way the law is, I had more to lose by staying there and fighting for it. Nothing much to gain. The only person alive of my abusers, his life is really not worth, that, even if he goes to prison, it's not going to make much of a difference.
No.
Right. So, but then I had much to lose, because if I get into a legal entanglement, my ability to leave the country would be difficult.
Yeah.
Right? And for me, it was never anyway about the abuser, because that had already been out of my head. It was more about the family. So for me, it was actually taking steps towards moving out of that comfort zone. And even as children, that's something that I have seen over and over again. No matter how toxic it is, we tend to love and try to stay there. Maladaptive practices, but we tend to stay there. It might come out as anxiety, it might come out as rebellious streak, etc., but we tend to stay there. But being able to come out of it, I think, was the best thing that I've done in my life.
Yeah.
And even then, so the fact was, I mean, I finally was able to step out of my country, and I mean, of that place, for, I think, for good. I got onto the flight, and I still reached out to my eldest brother. So that was, how the strength, that loyalty was. I reached out to my eldest brother, thinking that maybe, if we do a therapy with something that he had recommended. But then surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, he lashed out even further. And then I'm like, okay, this has to go. This has to go.
Yeah.
And now I think I have moved past it. But that transition was the toughest thing. And I have been hurt, I have gone through depression, etc. But this, I think, was the toughest thing.
Yeah, because you did mention at the start of our conversation that you also had very difficult times, that you faced sleeplessness and depression and anxiety.
Yes.
So it really had a very big impact also on your mental well-being.
Yes. So, so having come from this background, I think for me, relationships were very important. So finally, when I committed to somebody, I was completely in it. So when a divorce happened, it came as a surprise for me. I was not expecting it. I mean, I had complete blinders on. I had no idea that this is happening. So when my partner wanted a divorce, I went into a depression. So yes, I do see that. And I think, that loyalty part of me is very strong even now. But my ability to honor myself has over the years improved. So I know that tomorrow I would be better if situations go south. I think I would be able to do what is good for me and good and therefore good for all.
Yeah. Is it correct that because you describe this, it's a painful process,
It
and
is.
you may have to even come to a point that you have to break with someone who you have always truly loved or you felt very connected with, and I think this is a very difficult decision to take. Do you stand behind that decision? Has it brought you also good things?
Yes. Like I said, I mean, this, I think it finally facing it has set me free. And it's brought in the amount of peace that I didn't have in the past.
Okay.
Knowing that, I mean, and knowing that I'm there for myself, I think that's the greatest thing it has brought. Otherwise, even I was not there for myself. I was blaming my family for not being there for me, but what about me? I was not there for myself either.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
see, I continue to love my country, my state, my family in my ways.
Yeah,
But the difference is that I love myself too now.
yeah. Or you love yourself first. Well, that's a good way. I have a last question because it's a good moment to ask that question because it shows in your story also that despite these moments of defeat that we feel like even we may come to a point that we feel that we cannot continue, and we have this ability to resurrect. And we use the lotus flower as a symbol in that respect, that it submerges and it emerges every day. It has to do with our will to live, our resilience, and our vitality, which allows us to stand up every time. Can you name or describe a specific moment in that journey that you have gone through that you felt, yes, the power is me? Is that related to a moment or something that happened?
Um, I think for the longest time, I've been committed to happiness and a very holistic sense of happiness, not the fleeting, happiness you get when you see a like or something like that. Okay. So that commitment was there, and I realized that I was at a juncture where I had to either be committed to happiness or I had to be committed to a toxic loyalty. So that was the point. And standing where I was, it was almost like, I'm on one bank of a river. It's really muddy. And if I have to blossom, I have to be at the other side. All right. And I've been trying to swim or I've been blaming things, etc., in the past. But somehow the way things happened, purely because I wanted a shift. Again, all this happened because for a year I've been saying, I want a shift. I need to move out. This is not where I belong, etc. That it kind of built up momentum so much that it kind of, pushed me right out. So, yes, for me, I think, yes, it's the riverbank and going to the other side and things that I had learned in the past kind of helped me maybe sail through the river rather than have to swim, because I don't think I would have survived if I had to swim through it. So yes, this is how I would see it.
And your commitment in your case, I think your commitment to yourself and also to empower yourself is also your commitment to happiness. And maybe as a final note, can you tell us how do you see that happiness can play a role in this process of self-empowerment? Because I have the feeling that in your case it was very important.
So when happiness, no, now happiness is the result of many things. If I don't have empowerment, I won't be happy. If I don't have self discovery, I won't be happy. If I'm not economically stable, I won't be happy. If I'm not supported, I won't be happy. So when I'm working towards happiness, I'm working on many other things. If my physical health is not good, I won't be happy. Right. Or maybe I learn the skill of being patient and accepting my physical health issues then I can be happy. So it's a beautiful evolution. So for me, ultimately, happiness is the result of the choices that you make. It is the result of, deciding, okay, I am responsible now. And again, for me, my commitment to happiness is not individual. I'm actually fascinated by happiness because I look at people who have gone through, for instance, Nurzia. She, like, in the group that we met in, Nurzia just stood out because there was so much of radiance to her. There was, and that always fascinates me. And I want to know, how do people do that?
Mm.
How do countries that become happier, maybe in a research, become that? What are the common denominations and things like that? So I'm committed to research and very curious about it, and I would like to see if others could also benefit from it. And
Mm.
in the process, I test it on myself.
Yeah, okay.
And it's been step by step by step, and every step of the way. And again, I never say you should be happy all the time.
No,
Life is chaotic, but it's beautiful.
yeah,
Some
yeah,
days it makes you weep, but it still gives you strength to, as you said, rise the next day and blossom.
yeah, yeah.
So that, I think, is the journey. I hope it kind of answers the question.
Yeah, well, it does. A couple of things stand out in what you say, and also in earlier in the interview, you spoke about inner peace, that you feel at peace with yourself. You also mentioned in the case of Nursia the fact that she radiates, and this has to do with, I think, this inner peace. That if you really are at peace with yourself, and also you honor yourself. You spoke about self-worth. You spoke also about things. These are very important elements also of empowerment, and that we have to unleash and also uncover, because we are able to be powerful if we are able to find that source of strength in ourselves. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sadly, for generations, we've been told to be silent,
Yeah.
especially women across
Yeah.
cultures, across, you say, we see that, we've been taught to be silent,
Yeah.
but finding your voice.
Finding your voice. Well, that's a very beautiful phrase to finish this interview. Thank you very much for this
Thank
interview, and I hope that all the listeners will be inspired by this wonderful words of Nuthan. Thank you.
Thank you, Saskia, for the space to open up. This is the first time I'm opening up about it.